Hello. So here I am, sitting in my mate Dave's chair, still looking after his grandchild. But I have another story for you. It's another shorty. Not quite as short this time. It does go on for a bit longer. Hope it doesn't go on too too long. It is very short. And this one is called "The Ill-Fitting Man." And it came to me after a visit to Arnside up in North Lancashire for a walk, a hike really, and the boar was coming in up the estuary there, and it was quite a magical sight. And for some reason, this story came into my head, fully formed. It's called The Ill-Fitting Man. Dan spotted the monster as he drove along the side of the Kent estuary into Arnside. It was as big as a bus, two buses, perhaps. Its neck made up almost half its length, and it stood in the mud as the tide ran out, looking lost and terrified. Vast, ancient, impossible, it floundered in the ooze, rolled its pallid eyes, and gasped at the cold air. Pulling up by the roadside, Dan got out and joined the crowd, standing watching it as it lay gasping in the shallow tidal water. It stank of fish and shit. "What is it?" he asked excitedly. "A plesiosaur? Something like that?" But they were reptiles, and this has gills, someone said. It was true. There were the flippers of the long neck, the fanged jaws, but all along the neck were rows of red frilled gill openings. The monster flopped weakly in the mud. Its head sank. It gasped. The crowd watched in silence. "It's dying, isn't it?" someone asked. Dan felt sick at the thought. For years he'd wanted to see a monster. Here at last there was one, and it was at death's door. "If there's one, there must be more of them," he said. A tall man standing nearby shook his head. "No," he said firmly, "this is the last one." Dan turned to look at him. "How can you know that?" he asked. The man laughed nervously, a high-pitched giggle, followed by a splutter as if caught by surprise. "What was that?" he asked, and he laughed some more, carefully this time, as if he was tasting a flavour he was unused to. "I asked you how you knew it was the last one," repeated Dan. "Right," said the man. He shrugged as if the answer was obvious. Down below on the mud, the monster flailed and gasped. It beat at the mud with its head. "Not long now," said someone in the crowd. "She's just confused," said the tall man. He waved at the creature. "Go back," he yelled. "Back to the water. It's your only chance." "What makes you think it's female?" asked Dan, unsure if the man was an expert or mad or just a know-all. The man shook his head. "Well, it looks female," he said. "Narrow bones above the eyes. Lipstick. You know the sort of thing." He frowned. And then suddenly he grabbed at himself through his trousers and smiled. "Wow," he said, and he beamed as if he'd just found jewels hidden in his pocket. The monster had raised his head and was staring at the man like a lost pet, opening and closing its dumb mouth. "It's too late," yelled the man. "It just happened. You need to go." "She lives in the deep trenches, you know," he told Dan in response to a curious look. "Down there in the dark, feeding on whale corpses for millions of years." He laughed excitedly. "You'd do anything to get out, eh?" He flapped his arms at his sides excitedly and paused when his head caught something in his pocket. He fumbled at his jacket for a few seconds before he found his way inside and fished out a packet of Marlboro and car keys. "Car keys," he said slowly, and he looked behind him suddenly at the cars parked nearby. "My car!" he exclaimed excitedly. He stared blankly at Dan for a moment, then he said, "My name's Alan Hendrick. I'm a marine biologist. I like roast chicken and mash and tomato sauce. I can't bear fish skins," he added, and he shook his head in disbelief. "Doesn't like fish skin," he said to Dan, as if it defied all explanation. "I'm married," he added. "Married," he repeated. He turned again to look at the parked cars. He began to walk rapidly away. Behind him the monster opened its mouth and failed to bellow. It beat its head and neck in the mud. The tall man turned impatiently. "Get into the water," he yelled. "You can breathe in the water." The monster turned and looked at the muddy tide. Impulsively, it plunged its head under the water. At once, water began to pump through the red-frilled openings in its neck. "Good." The tall man walked away, flexing his shoulders and swinging his arms and legs as if he was unused to his own body. He got in the car, opened the boot and climbed in, scrambling through to the driver's seat. After a few false starts, he got it going. Behind him, the monster lifted its head to cast him a final lingering look. Then it turned and slowly began to enter the water. The man wound down the window. "Back to the deep and the dead whales," he yelled, and laughed raucously. Then he drove off. There you go. The ill-fitting man, and I haven't been recording anything at all throughout the whole thing. Oh, I have. I just had the wrong one there. Oh, well, that's all right. I can edit it. Thank you. Come back for the next one. Bye.